Gentlemen, friends and foes, lurkers and regulars, welcome back to the Social Rejects Club. I'm your host. My call sign is Hesher, per usual, running over here in the boiler room. We're broadcasting live out of Central Texas over here at alternatecurrentradio.com and Spreaker.com. Thank you for rejoining us if you've been with us for, the duration of the quarantine series and whatever this new phase of reality we're finding ourselves in right now, whatever I'm going to end up, some horrible, creative, funny name I'm going to have to make up for this next arc of real life. I don't know what it's going to be, but thank you for rejoining us. And if you're just checking out the show for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Boiler Room, and here we go. We call ourselves the Social Rejects Club around here because so many people just don't like it when you're not right enough or left enough, or when you're too conspiratorial, or when you're not conspiratorial enough. It's just the lines are just screwed up and blurry everywhere, and it's so hard to keep friends and find friends and family members and all that stuff. Things are a mess right now. Everything is so polarized, and it sucks. But this is where we find ourselves, and I am having a special interview tonight with a new friend that we made through a mutual friend, our buddy Kimmy out there. What's up, Kimmy? I'm going to introduce this person to the boiler room here. He was a mainstream media journalist with three of the largest publishing companies in Germany, and he's currently an independent researcher. He's also an author. He wrote a book called The Capitalism Conspiracy and another one called The United States of Europe. And his name is Oliver Janich. Oliver, welcome to the boiler room. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Thank you for joining us. It took us a bit to get you all set up and in the boiler room, but I'm stoked that you're here tonight. You're looking fabulous over there. It's great to see you on the video feed. All right. Yes. Excellent. Okay. Well, so tell us, introduce yourself to our audience here, for those of you that may not know who you are or what you do. I'm really pleased to hook up with someone who is so tuned into what's going on in Europe, and really interested in your perspective as someone that used to work in mainstream media. So we've had all these major events happen. We have this ongoing lockdown in some places, and the whole coronavirus thing is just madness. And now we've got all this civil unrest happening everywhere. So just feel free to give me your take on anything that you've experienced. And I'm really curious about the that European perspective there. And you're also outside of Europe right now broadcasting. So I think that may give some other insight too.
Yeah, maybe I start with introducing myself. As you said, I work for the three biggest news companies in Germany. I think I was one of the first persons in the world, at least in Europe, who called out the 9/11, the official 9/11 story in a title story with the second biggest business magazine in Germany called Focus Money, and it was called "We Don't Believe You." And I think I was the first one in a really mainstream business journal who wrote about that. Back then, it went around the world. I guess there are some English articles about that. Even one translated it, but I didn't find it anymore. So that got me into the whole truth movement, I'd say. Because when I discovered that 9/11 was the official story is wrong, or is easily to prove wrong from a scientific standpoint, I dig deeper. Maybe important for the viewers is that I studied business, but I majored in empirical science. So I'm a science guy. I'm into proving of theories. You never can prove a theory, but you can falsify theories. That's what I'm doing in all my books. That I have a scientific approach to that. Even my thesis in the university was about the capital asset pricing model of Markowitz, who won a Nobel Prize for that, and I falsified his theory. So I'm very much into science. And you can disprove the official 9/11 theory with simple physics, Newton's laws. And then I thought maybe they lie to us in other topics too. And then I discovered the climate change fraud. And this actually was my first article in a mainstream magazine, that I debunked the myth of man-made global warming, which was allowed back then at this big company, which was surprising to me. It was done like a debate. There was another journalist, a colleague, who put the other position, or described the other position. He believed, I think he still believes in it, and I had the other position. So we had a kind of debate, which is not possible anymore, at least in Europe, about climate change. And then my next bigger article was about 9/11. And if you study these two things, then you start thinking about, why are they lying to us? What's the goal? And then I got into libertarianism and the Austrian School of Economics, and I combined that with the truth, with the investigative journalism, because from the Austrian school you learn that the government is basically your enemy, to put it short, and then you are not wondering so much why they are all lying to us, because it's all about power. And then you get from lie to lie, and now I'm covering secret societies and all that stuff, and it's very surprising how much you can prove. Most people think that these are wild conspiracy theories, but many of these things are very easy to prove. So yes, there are secret societies, and and of course, maybe I explained that in the beginning, if you get to the top of a hierarchy and you're from a secret society, you can assure that the next one who follows you is also in the same secret society. It's a very simple scheme. A 5-year-old could come up with that. But the masses are so brainwashed that they think that's a crazy theory, but it's basically human nature. If you have power, you want to hold it or you want to expand it. And so, yeah, I wrote several books. I'm very popular in Germany in terms of social media. I have 120,000 followers on Telegram, which makes me, I think, the #1 in the world or something. And on YouTube, 145,000. And that's partly because I cover almost every topic which is in the mass media, and most of what they tell us are lies.
Yeah, I hear that, and that's one of the things I love about doing this show. I very quickly realized when I was on a similar path to that there is a fabricated reality that's being placed in front of everybody by the media, and that just the entire concept of propaganda was so important to explore. And I've always tried to do it in a way that is somewhat nonpartisan while still being critical, where criticism needs to lie in any group of people, of partisan politics or alternative politics and whatnot. But yeah, if I was telling someone the other day, if someone had been listening to this show for 5 years and only took away one thing, I would want them to take away that the mainstream media is as one of my friends calls, a mass media cartel, and they exist solely to create realities for people. And all of the wars that we've had in modern times have all been started under a lie from mass media cartels, backed up by bankers and Fortune 100 tycoons and shit like that. So, that's really important, and it's rare to find someone like yourself that's willing to step away from that cushy. I assume it's cushy, at least it may seem so, because people don't want to leave it, right? They're willing to toe the lies forever and ever, to the point then drag us all into wars and famine and all this stuff that we certainly don't need, and probably wouldn't have if people weren't so susceptible to militarized propaganda.
Yeah, it was very cushy. I think I was the best paid journalist in Germany, because when I worked at Focus Money, they put out a list of how much business journalists earn and how much they earn at our company, and it was a huge amount. But I discovered that I earned more than all of them. So maybe I was maybe I was the best paid journalist at that time. So I gave up a lot, but I guess it's worth it, because if you discover that you are basically part of a lying machine of fake news media, and you have a conscience, then you can continue with that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that makes good sense to me, definitely. And to go down each of those rabbit holes that you were going down and discover, oh my gosh, there is potentially a secret society behind this, and a shadowy international cabal behind that, and a group of insurance agents and bankers behind that, and intelligence people behind that. And here we are, we find ourselves in the year 2020, and we're being told that there is a terrible flu that means everybody in the whole world needs to give up whatever semblance of freedom their country still allows them to have. They need to wear muzzles. They need to not be with their wives when they give birth, or their parents when they pass on. All these things, everything, you need to be surveilled. It's like a Orwellian nightmare, which just flipped on all of a sudden. And for 6 to 8 weeks, everybody's stuck indoors. Some people, by force, some by fear, voluntary by fear, some by policy. And everything has gone mad, it feels like. And just overnight again, another flip is switched. And all of a sudden, we're told that we live in a systemically racist world, and that everything that created the United States and other countries, Europe also, is based in pure evil racism, and we need to have an uprising, and fight the power, fight the man. But the quote is from the Fortune 100, and people don't seem to understand that the Fortune 100 are the mainstream media, are the governments, are the intelligence agencies, are the World Health Organization, the IMF, all this stuff. It's all they all have the same plan, and everybody's reacting to the news as though this is real. I mean, I hate to keep it like so fundamental, but it is that easy for me.
Yeah, it is that easy, and there really is some racism, and of course on an individual basis, but the main racism comes from the left against whites. You see that now with the protests, so that's the main topic would be the racism from the left. It's also, if you look into the statistics, that blacks are much less murdered from police, much less policemen murder blacks than whites if you compare it to the crime rates. So, for example, half of the murders are committed by blacks, but only 23% of blacks are shot by police. So there is some kind of racism. It's not real racism in that sense that they hate whites in the police, but they are very afraid to shoot on a black suspect because they know what then happens. So there's some racism involved, but it's the other way around. It's basically, I talk about that a lot. It seems a little bit odd to some audience, but that's the satanic principle to flip it all 180 degrees. So it's almost every time it's the opposite of what they tell you. One major example would be CO2. CO2 is without CO2 we would all die. So it's a natural thing. Plants need it, we need it. So and they tell us it's poison. So it's exactly the opposite. And if you look at the big stories, they tell us it's almost, in every case, it's the opposite, and the goal is to control us. And the coronavirus, of course, we are not on YouTube here, because so I can tell you that half a dozen of my videos about the coronavirus were deleted on YouTube, but I can tell you there is no coronavirus. So at least it's only a harmless flu. But if you analyze the data, and I'm a data guy, there is no excess mortality. For example, in Germany, the average age of the people dying is 81. And the average age of people dying in Germany is 81. So even if there is a virus, then it's not deadly at all. So, and there's even not a proof that the virus even exists, because the tests they take, the PCR test, does not prove the existence of a virus. It does only show that RNA particles were in your body, but they are naturally occurring in your body, and it depends on how you measure it and how you design the test. And they already admitted, not in mainstream, but that it's only an accuracy of 50%, though it's a coin flip. So if you measure 1,000 people, you will get 100 or 500 positive results, but that does not mean that you have the virus. And if you die with the positive test result, it does not mean that that you died because of the virus. And that's simple statistics. So you even don't have to know too much about biology. I went into that too because the lie is so big that I was so curious what's behind that. But you even don't need that. And if you see the reaction of the politicians, they act like there's a deadly virus. And like you said, it's only to steal us our freedom. And I predicted that years ago that they will try to imprison us, that we can't fly anymore, then that we can't go anywhere anymore. But I didn't know that they come up with this ridiculous virus to justify it. But I predicted that this will happen. But the power elite always has some surprises for us.
Yes, yes, they sure do. And they really did the beginning steps after 9/11. I'm sure you've spoken on that plenty, but I've likened the daily experience here in the United States now to getting on an airplane. It's like you've got these low grade, no offense to any nice TSA workers out there, I know they do exist, and some probably listen, but I'm sure they know that among their own ranks there are some low grade people there that now have some sort of an enforcement job, a federal enforcement job, even though they don't have technical law enforcement training or even security training probably, and they're asked to do very strange rituals to get people used to giving up their body sovereignty and the sovereignty of their own belongings, which is understandable maybe to a certain extent. But after 9/11, it went somewhere completely different. But now I'm getting messages from listeners who want to go to our friend Ruckus wanted to go to a thrift store. They wanted to take his temperature to go into a thrift store. I mean, it's like TSA has been overnight exported to any employee anywhere. There's people at, like thrift stores and Bed Bath and Beyonds and grocery stores telling people that they have to take their temperature. And I mean, this is straight up illegal because of the HIPAA laws here. And it's just like everybody's just totally lost their mind over whatever this thing is, even if coronavirus was real, it's still by square statistics is no worse than influenza A. And like you said, it's the vast majority of people died in rest homes and were over 80 and over. It's just amazing. I'm blown away. Like if they were trying to make shock and awe inside of the alternative media, they did it, because I'm, well aware of how dumbed down the population is. But to see this happen over coronavirus and now this happen over the George Floyd incident here is amazing to me. It's like the dream of the new world order. Basically, they can turn on anything on us now.
Exactly, and you used a very important word. You said rituals at the airports. And what we are seeing now is, in my opinion, it may be a little bit far-fetched. I don't know your audience, but what we see now is a mass satanic ritual with all the politicians and policemen kneeling down, because that's worshiping a man, in this case George Floyd, or a man-made organization like Black Lives Matter. And that's the Luciferian doctrine, to worship not God but man. And it's also part of the New Age movement. Everyone can become a god and so on. And this is their doctrine. And this is a mass ritual. These bowing down for a guilt. Nobody of us shot this guy or killed this guy. Of course, he has to be prosecuted, and he was a horrible fascist and sadist. most likely, and he should be in jail as long as possible. But what does it have to do with me or you? We didn't do that. And even the mayor was liberal, the governor is liberal, the attorney general is very liberal. So if anybody is to blame, then these guys, but not the other guys who just want to have liberty and peace.
Yeah. Yeah. And now they're talking about getting rid of the police. Like the extreme left wants to get rid of law enforcement altogether. And, you know, I will be the first to admit there are some serious problems with up the yin yang with law enforcement in general. It's a mess, but no one is going to defund it. That's just like a fantasy, and I don't know. The whole thing is just getting really crazy because now we're seeing the media not reporting certain attacks and assaults and murders if they don't fit the narrative. For example, there was a retired black cop who was shot dead, murdered, and not a single mention. Not a single mention. Yeah. And there are more stories like that too, of people who have been killed and maimed and all kind of terrible stuff. And these reporters are out there just collecting stuff 24/7. And they're throwing all that stuff to the side and only showing the stuff that puts fuel on the fires of outrage and confusion. I feel like the confusion factor is really important. Like the fog of media confusion right now is warlike, I think.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very good example. The 77-year-old guy, a black guy, and he enforced the law his whole life. He taught young people, and even after getting out of job, he was a sheriff and so on. Even after it's in a pension, or I don't know how to say. So he was a really good guy. And there's no state funeral or something like that. And the other guy was a criminal. I mean, he didn't deserve what he got, but that's a whole different story. And he was black, but most likely the murderer also was black. They caught somebody, but I don't care about that. But this would be somebody you would take care of and more and so on. So it's totally crazy. And as you said, you can always pick one incident and blow it out of proportions, and that's what they always do. And if you are part of the truth movement for a few years, you see it coming. But I'm really shocked, I must say, of how big it got. Of course, Soros funded and so on, but even in Germany, thousands on the street. I mean, what has it to do with Germany? And thousands on the streets, Antifa, of course, and the craziest thing about it, like in the US, they didn't care about social distancing. And now the same politicians who said, you need social distancing, no, it's okay, it's for a good cause. Oh, the coronavirus is in it. They said, okay, I don't infect you because it's a good cause. It's so crazy. And it's hard to watch. I mean, I wrote about mass manipulation and the psychology of masses. I even studied also in marketing. It's more or less the manipulation of the masses. But that it got so out of hand, I was surprised. In America, especially, I thought it would not be possible to pull that off after 4 years of Trump. I mean, we will get into that. I'm an anarchist, so I'm skeptical to all politicians, but he did a lot of good things. And I thought that even some on the left learned that lesson, that he's not a racist. He did the opposite of what they accused him, the Prison Reform Act and so on. So he did a lot in the opportunity zones for blacks, and not especially for blacks, but in zones where many blacks are. So he did a lot of good things for the black community, and they still could pull off this thing. It's hard to watch.
It is. It's very hard to watch, and it's very hard to see it being politicized in such a way by the mass media. It is really frustrating because if you look at where things have gone wrong, you speak a lot about monopolies and monopolies of force, and I find that really interesting because if you look at the places where those have really gone wrong, they're across the aisle here in the United States. It's people on the right and people on the left that are pursuing these things and voting for these things and not standing up for their constituents. And it looks a lot worse on the blue states. It definitely does. I mean, they are just. I'm concerned at the behavior of some of the governors and senators and congresspeople here in on the progressive Democratic side because they've gone so far. I think they're behaving in such a way that they aren't worried about being reelected, and it makes me concerned that they know something that they don't have to worry about being reelected. And that's just that's my gut feeling. I don't know anything to support it other than the behavior of these people is striking right now, and it really has me concerned about what's coming next.
Yeah, there are a lot of things which can come, but maybe they are only desperate. That's my hope, that they are only desperate and don't know what else to do. But there are topics. I talked about. I have an English video out. I didn't put it out on video on YouTube. Followers of mine did it, and it got deleted. I think there will be a bioweapon attack. Because Bill Gates predicted it, but the bioweapon will be in the vaccine. So if they put something in the vaccine and maybe they combine it with 5G and Donald Trump does not do anything against 5G, then there are really more people dying. So it will be really a deadly attack. And then the people will cry for help and will cry for more vaccines and for more drastic measures and so on. So if they know that, then that could be an explanation. I mean, I still believe Trump is a good guy. I still believe it. But you always have to consider that he's not, or he's under so much pressure and so on. So you always have to look at all sides, and you're right. It's very concerning that they act like crazies and think they can get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, in this country, there's over 1.8 million firearms sold this year after the coronavirus thing happened, and now there's another surge happening because of the civil unrest. There's 330 plus million people in this country, and there's already polls saying that 1/3 of the population here would not be willing to take a coronavirus vaccine. And we know that with the full press from all of the media in Hollywood and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that's what they want. That's clearly a part of the end goal here, is to halt people from traveling without vaccine IDs, ID 2020, all these things, all these little pots that Bill Gates and all his buddies have their ghoulish fingers in, all these conflicts of interest happening. So I just don't see it happening without, I hate to say it, but violence, a lot of violence in the way that the left is behaving right now. And I'm just talking about your average CNN viewer. This thing with Antifa really is turning into something bigger than it was during 2016. I'm seeing reports that people are finding like lists of people that are in this organization, and it's like thousands of people, hundreds of pages long per country. And the level of organization of them seems to really kind of be coming clear too, like how they have very specific rules of engagement, and they are very violent. They're very similar to like the Weather Underground, and maybe directly connected also, if you look into some of the names there. So I don't know. I'm really starting to wonder if we're headed for at least an election season here in the United States that is going to be bloody at the polls, perhaps, or maybe coronavirus part 2 will hit, and what you just said might happen, and everybody will have to vote from home and trust that the big in government are going to count the numbers right.
Yes, that's a great concern to me too, and they want a civil war. That's totally clear. But in the end, it's a big hope that many Americans have weapons. That's the reason for it's the Second Amendment, right? That was so wise. I mean, the United States were founded by Freemasons, and I always wonder why they put that in. But maybe they did because back then it wouldn't have been possible to not put it in. But that's the most important thing, that the Americans have weapons. So even if there is a civil war, then, I mean, it's impressive how many people show up now at the Antifa protest, but they are not strong. I think if there is a fight, it will be short. It will be 1 or 2 weeks because they are cowards. Usually they attack one, even elderly persons or girls. In Germany, you have lots of that, old people, young girls and females and so on. And they come with 10 people. A friend of mine was attacked by 10 people and they couldn't knock him out. So he is also a YouTuber. He made a big story out of this. And they couldn't really kill him. I mean, it was an unfortunate story, but that's what they do. And if there is a real fight, man to man, and they are less, I guess, much less than the Americans with weapons. So it will be a short fight. So if they want to do it, it will be a big mistake. But of course, many lives would be lost in that, and many, how do they say, collateral damage, of course. So that's more a hope for me that the Americans have weapons, but that's what they try to do. That's totally clear. And they are not in charge. If Hillary Clinton would be in charge, which is much worse than Donald Trump, even if they don't like Donald Trump, then you have a problem, because then what they want to do is they want the chaos, and then they want to have the New World Order officially. I mean, in part it's already there, but officially install the New World Order. But now you have Trump in charge, and it would be very strange if he would change his course suddenly. And so if you have the right president, that's very hard to keep that civil war going and so on.
Yeah, definitely. So if Biden somehow wins, if the American public allows themselves to be locked indoors during the voting season, and an election is stolen, things could get really bad real fast. I've heard them saying they want to get rid of the Electoral College, they want to defund police, they want to do all the Green New Deal stuff, the insanity of the Green New Deal, which is basically, people think it's about saving the planet, but no, it's about taxing. It's about taking money from you for every breath you take, every mile you walk, every flatulence you have. They want to tax you for it. And then they'll probably also want to add more Supreme Court justice seats so that they can dominate the Supreme Court. And worst of all, if they can get enough unrest and violence, be it provoked or be it organic, I think they will try to have a constitutional convention and suspend the Constitution, or at least take away the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, the Third, the Fourth, the Ninth. Just gut it, change it to update it to Agenda 21 sort of language, and it'll all be over from there on out. That's the worst case scenario. Well, I guess it's not the worst. We could think of worse things probably, but I mean, I think that is a direction that people should be concerned about if we are locked in for voting season, or if voting gets suspended for some reason. I mean, at this point, I won't be surprised if a holographic or realistic alien spaceship lands and,
Blue beam, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or a Terminator manifests or something.
Yeah, this is really concerning. If they win in November through manipulation, then it's game over, more or less. I mean, you still have the Americans with weapons, but they will never let that happen again. What happened with Donald Trump? They will do everything that this will never happen again. I think it was an accident. Some say it was planned. I don't think so, because he's still, all the mass media is against him, besides Fox, but Fox also is covering up for the truth and many other things. But they will never let that happen again. So they will install a full-scale dictatorship if they win. But I think if they would manipulate the election so much, he would call out martial law and then Gitmo and so on. I don't think he would let that happen. And maybe he's so slow. I mean, the progress is not enough for me. There are no mass arrests, and I'm sure you're familiar with the QAnon movement and so on. But nothing really happens. But maybe it is because he knows that in the end he has this card in his hand that even if they win the next election, he just says martial law, and then he does all the things. So maybe that's one of the reasons why he's going so slow, much too slow in my opinion. I'm really mad at him with the coronavirus thing because he ruined the economy, and it's totally unnecessary. Look what Japan did. They counted the deaths in the right way. They have about 800 coronavirus deaths, and it's 126 million people there. What did they do? They say, okay, it causes respiratory disease, so we just test the pneumonia patients if they had coronavirus, and then you come up with 800 people, which is a realistic figure if the coronavirus exists. He could have done that. So he just could have said, no, we don't do anything. We just let it play out. Then the press would be mad at him, but at the end he counts the deaths. And if they would have shown the wrong figures, like 100,000, but like they show now, he just could have said, no, these tests are not allowed because they are not approved. These tests are not approved. And if somebody uses it and he's a governmental employee, he goes to jail. That's easy. I mean, you can forbid freedom of opinion that somebody tells that more people die. But if the government agency do that, it goes against their duty. So if I would have been president, I would have thrown them all in jail if they would have said there are 100,000 deaths, because it's a lie. And he just could have said, for example, that how is it when somebody is dead and you examine them? What's the English word for that?
Autopsy.
Autopsy, yeah. So he just could have said, oh, we do autopsies on any of them, and that's it. So maybe I put a video out there that maybe there's some kind of master plan that he wanted to get the power from the Fed to the Treasury Department. Q hinted that. Maybe that's one of the reasons he did that, but to ruin the whole economy and to feed the narrative that there's a deadly virus. He even takes some medicine against it. I'm mad at him at that. And at the beginning, some truthers said, yeah, it's because he wants to mass arrest the people now, but they didn't. So that wasn't the reason for that. So I got more and more skeptical towards Trump because of that. Until that moment, I was pretty satisfied with what he did. He didn't start wars, although they provoked him in Syria and so on. So he did pretty good, I would say. But with the coronavirus thing, I'm very skeptical. I'm more skeptical now than before.
Yeah.
I don't know what's your opinion. What's your opinion on that whole thing?
I'm with you. I'm with you on that one. I've been skeptical of QAnon for a while now, but I think maybe when it first started, it had some good people behind it. But I think maybe it has changed over the presidency, and that wouldn't be a big surprise. And as far as I've tried to remain somewhat hopeful and agnostic about having a hard opinion on Trump. But after Corona, it's just really difficult for me to take it seriously because, I mean, you don't have to be a financial wizard to realize that that this was a global plan. Like, it wasn't just America that was going to lock down and do this. It was everywhere. And pharmaceutical companies and Fortune 100 boards and advertising agencies, television agencies, Hollywood, foreign embassies, everybody played along at the same dance tune. So to me, it's like, this isn't a national thing. This isn't a thing. If it were a national thing, we would be doing something different instead of doing exactly what all these NGOs and so-called health experts are saying. And if there's any new listeners out there that don't know what we're talking about with regards to the accuracy of the tests, we did an episode of Sunday Wire with Patrick Henningsen from 21 Wire, episode 326, and we had David Crow on, who gave a really good breakdown of why those test results are not reliable. So I'll link that on the show page if anyone wants to check it out. And to me, there again, more very simple stats. Like I was not a huge math fan in college. I went to a certain level, so I do have a stats. I took the class, but I'm certainly not wearing the T-shirt or pretending to be an expert in it. But when you know that we're being fed a dashboard of information about a pandemic, and that two of the main variables, which are testing positive and died with, not even died of or from, died with, which is already a pretty shaky variable to have in there. But if we know that, if someone falls off a building and they get added to the COVID death list, or someone gets hit by a truck and they get added to the COVID death list, and that the tests are basically a coin flip as to if they work or not. We've seen shoes and goats test positive, and papayas now. So, I mean, to me, that blows all of the numbers out of the water. And then you've got the Johns Hopkins University there being involved with running that dashboard, who were running the exact same dashboard on the government ArcGIS website only months earlier during a test of this exact thing, a simulation of this exact thing. Like, would they turn the simulation off for a couple weeks and then just come right back in? I mean, the whole thing is madness to me, and I can't understand the way, we had protests happening all over the world before Corona too, and they shut it all down. They shut France down, they shut Venezuela down, they shut Ecuador down, they shut everything down, all the protests, and look what's going on in Hong Kong right now too. It's just amazing, and I don't understand why people can't see like the larger picture, the larger. It's like a symphony almost of geopolitical maneuvering. It's Brzezinski. It's the grand chessboard, and it's all happening at lightning speed now.
Maybe interesting for you viewers too is that the Johns Hopkins University is connected to Freemasonry, and the college in Great Britain. I don't remember the name, is connected to Freemasonry. They even have a Freemasonry lodge on campus, which is very rare. And which your viewers will not know, the German university who is big in that, Leopoldina, is also connected very strongly to Freemasonry. They even have their main office now in a Freemason building. So you see that also behind all of that, and you even Corona even is 666 and so on. So the signs are everywhere, and that's, as you told, it's globally, and they are organized globally. They don't. They are not patriots. They don't care about nations. They want to abolish them, and that's exactly what they do. And you only can travel if you have the allowance of the big government and so on. So if you obey. So it's so obvious in one sense. I mean, more and more people are waking up. I don't know how it's in America, but in Germany we see a really awakening, because there are many doctors, I think much more than in the US, who came out and said it's bullshit. Many professors. And they were labeled now, or are labeled now in the mainstream media, as conspiracy theorists.
Isn't that amazing?
That's a very good thing. If professors with high reputation, I mean, they are part of the system, but with really high reputation are called conspiracy theorists and deleted from YouTube, then the ordinary people, some of them, start thinking, what? He always, and really high reputation. One was a retired Max Planck Institute, which is the biggest, the institute with the highest reputation in Germany, and she said that's all a hoax, more or less, and they only could go to the alternative media, and they had hundreds of thousands of views before they were deleted, and so more and more people are waking up, which is a very good thing. but that's a normal cause and reaction. Yeah. So on one side, more people are waking up, but on the other side, the sheeples are getting more aggressive by the day. So it's a little bit hard to watch, but an interesting development.
Yes, it's for people like you and me that have been looking at this stuff for years, it's a little less of a car crash sort of effect. To I have a lot of sympathy for people who were doing 9 to 5 and busy doing work and family and trusting that the media was some sort of functional fourth estate and they generally knew what was going on and what was quote unquote good and bad and all that. But to now, for so many of those people to have lost their jobs, lost their livelihoods, maybe even lost people in their lives, I mean, it's really got to be an insane thing to have to look at all these things that we're talking about down to the esoteric levels, even to look at secret societies that are behind stuff. I mean, the things that used to be, you'd get yourself in a rabbit hole like that and you could spend a month reading about it and looking at different viewpoints and digesting it and making your own decisions. And now it's just like everything's just coming at everybody really fast and we're having to think about NGOs and all this stuff. And while it's all happening, while you're right, free speech is being shut down basically worldwide. We've got we have Silicon Valley CEOs that are working like a hand inside a glove of NGOs and federal agencies. NATO itself, they have the Atlantic Council Digital Forensics Lab, which is essentially a giant spy hub for NATO that works directly with Facebook and others. So, I mean, the media outlets, of course, all being under full corporate media mafia control. So free speech is like being pressed really hard now. Everybody's being told, oh, you're breaking terms of services by inciting panic or fear or promoting conspiracy theories. So I don't know. It's really going to be interesting to see the clash of all these people coming to realizations and needing information, and then finding the information. And like, here's an example. I will do a show sometimes, and I'll have 3 or 4 YouTube videos up that I'll play a clip out of, and sometimes I'll walk away from this computer for maybe a day or two. And I'll come back to work on the show page, and I want to grab the links so that people can, see the content that I was linking to. And sometimes all those videos will have been removed within like 2 days. So the information is like, it's ephemeral now. It's only there for a moment. It's like, a flower that blooms on YouTube and then they come and they pick it like a weed. So we're going to have this really interesting battle of attrition between information and truth seekers and the new censors.
Yeah, I immediately download those videos, and then if it gets deleted, it's on my. I get it on my Telegram channel. This is one of the reasons why I'm so big there, because all the censored videos you can get there. I mean, it's for your audience. Most of it is in German, but that's an important tool. And I had the same experience, and that's why I always. Sometimes I cannot download it. I have an assistant, and if she's not there, I ask my followers download it before I post it. Because if I post it with so many followers, within half an hour it gets deleted. So I'm afraid of posting something because I make it big then, and then it gets deleted. So before that, you don't say. Sometimes I had a video with only 50 views, and then I posted it, and then it explodes. But then the censors get into it and say, "Oh, that's dangerous." So it's a fight they can't win. And that's my hope. Maybe we also get into cryptocurrencies. That's a big hope for me. I totally changed my mind about our future when the cryptocurrencies came up. That's one of the big solutions, in my opinion.
Yeah, if we can maintain unregulated cryptocurrency that actually allows for people to remain anonymous and have a free market, that would be awesome. There's also a guy up here in the state of Utah who has created a type of money. I think he's calling it the gold back, and it actually has threads of gold woven into the fabric of it. So there's a weighable amount of actual silver or gold in his dollar bills. I thought it was a pretty innovative idea. There's lots of innovative ideas to ways that we can reclaim a lot of these broken systems that they're really, really trying hard to weaponize against us right now, including the financial system. I mean, it's already been crushed. It's already been put on hold. The petrodollar is in question as it is, and we're seeing companies like Visa put in patents for regulated cryptocurrencies, and we're seeing the Microsoft and Bill Gates associated projects putting in. They have a really weird new patent about using people's biorhythms and magnetic energy to harvest Bitcoin. So it's really.
I think there's 666 in it. Is it that patent with the 666?
Yeah, I think it's.
They don't have it.
Yeah, patent number 060606 or something like that.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous. It's like so in your face, and it's like, okay, here are moments of opportunity right here, folks. Like that is a corporate evil right there that wants one world and, population control, all this stuff. There's a chance right here for all of us to say, no, we don't want Visa's version of cryptocurrency. And no, you can't use my biorhythms to mine anything.
Yeah. So cryptocurrencies give us the chance for decentralized exchange of anything, basically, also property. Maybe we now get into the real root of all evil, and then I can explain how cryptocurrencies play into that.
Oh yeah, I would love that. I was reading it, The Root of All Evil, and I love some of the stuff in there. Like you talk about solving problems, like the actual, the step-by-step of solving a problem, and some other things in there. So yeah, I'm really curious about how you think that all relates to property ownership and sovereignty of one's own self, their mind and body, and all that stuff.
Yeah, so if you want to solve a problem, you have to recognize the cause of it. And it's really important to get to the heart of the matter. And maybe your viewers are already also familiar with the non-aggression principle and the self-ownership and so on. But that's, in my opinion, not the real root of evil. Maybe I should add that my previous books were praised by the leading scholars of the Austrian economics, so different professors and so on. So I'm very deep into that topic. But I developed a kind of a new theory, and that's not yet accepted by these professors. So basically, it's a good thing, I guess. Just that your viewers know that I'm into all this libertarian theory and so on. And in my opinion, the root cause of the problem is that the conflict solver must not be party to the conflict. If we have a conflict, it's obvious that that you can't decide it, but me can, or I can decide it. It must be a neutral judge. I call it the principle of the neutral judge. That's obvious to everyone, but the government is the ultimate judge in all conflicts, and even the conflicts it is involved itself, the state. For example, you cannot sue the state and say the taxes are too high or the politicians didn't deliver on their promises. But you can sue a company, they delivered a service and it's not good, then you can sue. But the state is not even neutral if it could be. For example, it's very horrible in Germany how immigrants are treated, very different from native Germans. So there are so many cases. Just one case, there was a Turkish guy who raped a girl for hours. And the judge, even, it was a female, think of that, and she said, it's no denial of what happened. He raped her. But the judge said, oh, that's in his culture. He didn't know that this is not a good thing. So he went free. this would not happen with a neutral judge, because no woman would ever choose this company anymore. Who, in a private law society, it would be a company who does these decisions. Nobody would choose this judge anymore. And so that's the big difference, that if there's a neutral judge, you don't have these kind of problems. But the bigger thing behind that is that the monopoly of force, this is of course also, if you follow the normal libertarians, that the monopoly of force will always expand. But what's new, or what I think is new, that many libertarians also struggle with the idea, where does the property come from? I mean, it's obvious that nobody accepts the self-ownership and the non-aggression principle, because they all obey to the state. So where does it come from that property arises? Where does the property come from? And my idea is that the first step is that you have to have the neutral judge, and then only property comes into existence. And that works because if you don't have a state, you get an insurance, and of course the insurance says, yeah, we insure you. If you don't steal, if you don't murder, then we help you. And another insurance does not make any sense. And so the only thing you need now is a neutral judge. If somebody robs you, and he's really neutral, and he's neutral because it's not the government monopoly, but it's chosen by both sides. And I go into that specifically, how can it be that he's really neutral? This happens because there are two competing companies, your insurance and my insurance company, and they figure out what is really a neutral judge. And for example, if you would not accept it, and I'm the accuser, I accuse you of robbing me, then in the first instance, there will be more than one instance, of course, then I get to choose the judge out of your portfolio, out of the portfolio of your company, for example. And if the judge says I am right, and you don't accept it, then in the next step, you could choose the company. And if this company you choose says the same thing, then you get punished. And if they differ, both differ, then you have a third instance, and then you can randomly choose, for example, one of the 10 biggest companies, negotiation companies, or however you will call it, conflict resolving companies. So there you see that via a market process, there will be, maybe there will still be bad judges, but much less than if you have a monopoly of force. So this is a totally different approach, I think. I mean, Professor Hans-Hermann Hoppe, who also praised my first two books, he came up with the idea of the neutral judge. But he still says he's a natural law guy and still self-ownership and so on. And my thesis in the book is that it's not important. You don't have to fight about the philosophy of natural law or fight about the non-aggression principle. You just have to acknowledge this simple principle. And for the rest of the book, I lay out many, many examples. Maybe I get into the best example for that. Suppose you have a neighbor and he has a sign, don't trespass, that's my property. And your son gets on the neighbor's property and is drowning in the swimming pool. And you try to save your son. What does the libertarian say? They say, yeah, well, he can do it, he can save him, but if you have this property theory, you have to say, no, the father cannot rescue his son because he says you cannot go into my property. With my idea, I say, no, there will be a neutral judge, and of course the neutral judge would say it was okay to save the son. I mean, maybe he gets a fine for getting on the property, but for example, if the neighbor shoots you, even if he could see that you only wanted to save your son, he would not go free. And that's only because he is a neutral judge. So you avoid this question of the property. So there is no absolute property, because it's obviously insane that you would punish the father for rescuing his son. And the old libertarian theory, in my opinion, does not give an answer. One answer would be, yeah, of course he could do that because his property rights are less worth than the life rights of the son. But who decides that? And that's the neutral judge. So this is the important principle, not the property or the self-ownership, not the non-aggression principle. It's the principle of the neutral judge. And then you start from a very different point because you discovered the root cause of all the problems. And then I go into everything. I go into secret societies. Of course, they would lose all their power because they always use the state and the government. This is already also in the libertarian theory, but you can solve all the problems with one simple principle. And I like reduction. I like to reduce everything to the one cause, and then from that you can talk about any problem which could occur.
Yeah, absolutely. So that idea of the concept of the state with a capital S as the final decision maker or that ultimate judge for conflicts is where everything falls apart, and why property ownership is not functional right now. I mean, they are the ones that decide, they can take it away if they want. They do eminent domain seizures all the time. So I think it's really interesting, and I love the way you have it written out at one point here. You wrote, if the absence of a monopolist on the use of force is the prerequisite for property rights, it means the emergence of property is only the result of the absence of an ultimate judge.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to quote that because I forgot it, and that's you nailed it, or I nailed it, and you read it. That's the important thing. That it's only the result. The emergence of property is only the result of that absence of the ultimate judge. And if you think about it, we can debate about. I want to debate everybody, but in Germany, for example, I published it on a libertarian magazine, and I said, please debate me. Nobody debated me on that. Does that sound familiar? That's what the left is doing, and I don't get even any libertarian to debate me on that because you can win the argument, I guess. So, and all my books were bestsellers, so it's not that nobody read it, but in the scholars and so on, then I had one on my show. He said, "Yeah, it's interesting," and so on. But I never had somebody debate on me. So if you can come up with an example who counters that, I'm glad to talk about any difficult case you can make.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm certainly not going to tell you it's a flawed concept. I mean, at this point, to me, it sounds much better than what we've got going on right now. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I do appreciate it though, because we talked about other ways to do money. We talked about other ways to do work. We talked about other ways to do education. Education has been totally messed up. Health, talking about other ways to do health. A lot of people waking up and realizing that, hey, we're actually in a big problem here. When these guys decide they want to turn the shipping routes off, all of a sudden, everybody's broke. Our economy's messed up, and we're being told we're on house arrest. And it's a bit of a powder keg. I feel like they've set this up to explode into chaos, but at the same time, like you said, a lot of people are starting to get this, and they're starting to say, okay, wait a minute, hold on. So you're telling me that these people really have been planning this? And that's the other thing I like to point out to the audience or anyone who's dealing with the flood of information right now and trying to sort of readjust their context of what reality, the reality of the situation is. You don't have to listen to me and Oliver about the plans of these people. They've openly stated it. Read the writings of Bertrand Russell or Jacques Attali, or, pick a philanthropist, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. Look into all these people, and you will see. It's crazy. I mean, they say all these things. They say, yeah, we intend to corrupt culture, to degenerate culture, to do divide and rule, to use things like borders as weapons of mass migration. I mean, that all these things they say they want to do. They want to control the population, which doesn't necessarily mean getting rid of everybody. It literally means controlling you, when you can go outside, what you can buy, how much money you can earn, how many babies you can have. I don't know, all this stuff, what you can eat. They want to take meat away from you and make you eat soy slop for the rest of your life, or Soylent Green or something. And, these concepts sound alien to some people, but my point is, you can look at all these people that have been on steering boards and related to elites and elites themselves. They have been admitting that this idea of a technocratic, totalitarian, one world government is the ultimate goal. And why does that sound so insane to people who will watch all these movies? We've been watching these movies and TV shows our whole lives that have been, all we see is future dystopias and future totalitarian and technocratic regimes, and people think it's a joke still, and that this is about equality for everybody and it's about a flu going around. I mean, it's not, folks. It's about something totally different. It is about controlling the whole population at a global level. And
maybe it's a good idea to explain the principle of the neutral judge with the coronavirus.
Yeah, excellent. Good example.
Because that's a very good example for that. So first of all, we would have a totally different healthcare system, because why do we have the pandemic, the pandemic hoax? Because they want to sell us vaccines. There would be no vaccines, and that whole thing is called private law society. The book is called The Order of Freedom, but the concept is the private law society. And what would happen there? Now the government is liable for damage done through vaccines. This would not be possible in private law society. You would need an insurance. But a private insurance does not insure that. And for example, 5G is not insured by Lloyd's. Lloyd's said that we cannot insure that, and every other insurance company does not do that. So there would be no 5G, and there would be no vaccines, because nobody is liable, because everybody is liable for what he's doing. Because a neutral judge then decides if it really harmed. And in our times, the government who pays for the damages also decides who gets the damage. And it's out of the taxpayers' money. So that's totally ridiculous concept. So that's the first thing. There would be no vaccines, so there would be no pandemic hoax. And even if there would be, I don't believe in deadly viruses, but even if there would be, then the one who is infected would have to prove that he was infected by this guy, and not up front say you can't touch anybody. So they would have to prove it, and nobody could tell you can't go out of the house. And somebody who's afraid of the virus can just stay at home or put a full body condom over himself. So we wouldn't have any of that problems. And there you see how. And now it's the power elite, Bill Gates and the like, who control the governments, and they can force you to do all that crazy things. But in a private law society, there is no central government who can tell you what you can do or not. You have to prove it if somebody is harmed. Of course, that all wouldn't even happen. But even if it would happen, and that's the important thing. The neutral judge would say, no, there is no. You can't say that, because there is even not a proof of a virus. Maybe interesting for you, a German biologist goes by the name of Dr. Stefan Lanka. He went to the German courts. He put out a bet that nobody can prove that measles exist, and he put out the bet for 100,000 euros. I did the same by the way, for the climate change. But nobody challenged me, of course. But he was challenged. And at the end, at the highest court, was not the Supreme Court, it's called Bundesgerichtshof. That's falsely reported in some English media, alternative media. So the Supreme Court, but the highest court for this kind of cases. He said, no, he does not have to pay, because the other one, the opponent, did not prove that the measles virus exists. So if they can't even the measles virus, all forced vaccinations around the world are, they say it's because of the measles virus, but they cannot even prove that. So you see, in the private law society, all the topics would go away, and the many pharmaceuticals are very harmful. I guess you viewers already know that, and you could sue them. And there are many natural health products, and the governments try to forbid them. In the US, many good natural healing methods are already forbidden. That's not the case now in Germany, but they want to get rid of the, how is it called? Not doctors. It's called
natural.
Heilpraktiker. Yeah, natural doctors. You know, Heilpraktiker is the German word. They want to get rid of them, and they fight against them, and they are killed. Many of these people are killed, and that's the next important thing. They are killed. Also in the field of energy, I don't know if you know 0-point energy and all that stuff, Tesla, this is all real. So I can prove it now, but this is all real. But the people who develop a machine, they are killed. But it's covered up by the government, because the government would have to jail the killer. And in a private law society, you would have a special insurance for inventors, that you are covered with. That's an important concept of my book. That the private police would get rewards for solving the case. So, for example, if somebody is killed, the insurance company just puts out 10 million, which costs nothing. It's a few euros, a few dollars. I calculated in the book, and then everybody who solves the case gets $10 million. You see, that's a totally different concept. Now there's one police guy, and he's paid if he solves the problem or not. Usually he's not paid good enough, and so on, and nobody has an interest to really jail a criminal. They still do, but if you're powerful, you can buy the judges and so on. I also talk about what they do in a private law society then. But it's a totally different concept, that you get rewarded if you solve a case. The same would be in medicine. You just get rewarded if you heal. That would be a totally different concept. But nowadays you get rewarded if you subscribe the pharmaceutical companies' products, which are allowed by the state, and the studies to prove that they are safe is done by the pharmaceutical companies. And the monopoly, which is in the hand of the pharmaceutical companies, approves this. This is totally different. So we would live in a totally different world, and the power elite loses all their power, because that's the important thing. You always can change your insurance company, and if they get too big, that's the next question. If a monopoly arises, then you found a new company which is not so expensive, which does it better, and so on.
Yeah, that would be much, much better than what we're dealing with right now, because when people have to deal with lawyers or law enforcement, I mean, it's insane. It's just insane how many laws go through every year, and how many of them are completely unnecessary, you know? I mean, there's I think there's one right now that's being considered in the House or the Senate that's they're calling it like a lynching law, and it's like something they tried to ram through when Juicy Smollett did that media stunt. And I have a sneaky suspicion what they're trying to do is they're trying to reframe the definition of lynching so that it includes, you know, being mean online or something like that. You know? So, I mean, and I've noticed you've pointed out incidents, like you just gave us an example where people go free or people go to prison or jail based on their speak. You know, if they're a mean speaker, then, you know, depending on what their topic is, they may get elevated or they may get incarcerated.
Yes, that's especially bad in Germany, but that's for decades now. So you, for example, you cannot have a different opinion of the history of Germany. You get jailed, even if you're not a German. If you just travel to Germany and you said something which is different to the official story, you get jailed for decades now. And now you get jailed for expressing, for example, opinions on the immigration crisis, that you say no, that's a bad policy, and people are fined for that, for putting out a Facebook post, and that's real in Germany. So it's horrible.
It's really amazing, and it sets up a culture of snitching. It sets up a culture of anytime you're mad at someone, just look for a reason to say, hey, this guy said something mean, he said something not politically correct, or whatever, make them lose their jobs, send them to jail. I mean, this people, I don't understand why people don't realize that allowing this, even if you get glee out of seeing that happen to your political or whatever people you think oppose you, don't you realize that that can get turned around at you if you ever change your mind, or you have a moral or a belief or an analysis that you hold close and later on it goes out of vogue, out of style? I mean, this affects everyone, and people get so mad when you're not supporting different movements that are being pushed by the Fortune 100 and the media right now. And I wish I could just say to all of them, like, either we're all free or we're not. It's
Right.
real simple. It's either all of us are free and all of us have opportunities, or we don't. And if we don't, then we have a problem. We need to solve a problem, like you're saying, in the root of all evil. And we can't solve the problem if we can't recognize the root cause. Otherwise,
Right.
all we're doing is treating the symptoms.
Exactly. And the freedom of speech topic is, of course, one of the number one topic. It wouldn't exist in a private law society because it does not harm anybody. You have to have real physical harm. You can't say that he's mean to me and then I sue you. That's not possible. You have to really steal from someone or hurt him. And of course, that's what the left is doing now for decades. When they were called liberals, or they still call themselves that, they said, freedom of opinion is very important because they were not in charge. Then they wanted freedom of opinion, and now they are in charge, and then they want to destroy it completely. And but still, I think in the U.S., it's, at least on the law side, you really have freedom of expression, but they deplatform you on YouTube and so on. Maybe that's also an important topic, that the media, it's part of this complex. So it's not free enterprise. For example, Facebook is most likely a DARPA project. I don't know if you had something on that on your show, the LifeLock project. And we have proof that In-Q-Tel was into Google, so they sold shares of that. So these are not real free enterprises. They were founded in part by taxpayers' money and the deep state. And how they do it, they are evil geniuses. You have to admit that. In-Q-Tel attracts private investors, but they started. So a private investor, of course, you can only participate if you're in the club. Not everybody gets in there. And they say, okay, we find, I think it's 10 times. So the government money, it's 1 million, and 10 times is the private money. So you would think it's private. No, but the government can guarantee you that this business will be profitable. Because if they are not successful, they just give government contracts out and they get the money back. You see, it's similar like the CIA contract for Amazon. He got, I guess, 400 million or something, and then he bought at the same time the Washington Post. But he didn't have risk because he had the money from the deep state from the CIA, and that's how this works. It was started by the government, and all investors know that, and say, okay, if it goes wrong, then you get some government contract. At least everybody gets his money back. So what we see is not free enterprise, and they are protected by law. You cannot sue Google and Facebook because they say they are neutral platforms, like a telephone company, which obviously cannot be sued if we talk shit on the telephone, but they censor. So that's a protection from the government which should not exist because they are not neutral. They would have to prove that they are neutral, but they are not neutral. It's very obvious. And in Germany, for example, it's even in the US, they accuse Mark Zuckerberg of not censoring conservatives enough. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's totally ridiculous. He's a lefty and he's censoring left and right conservatives and conspiracy theories and so on, and they demand from him to censor more. So it's gotten so crazy, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I am blown away by that also. And the other thing you could point out about Facebook, couple of things. Number one, he will deplatform and suppress by algorithm anyone in any country, not based on his own politics. Like we look at the way he operates here in the United States and in Europe, and it seems like to a lot of truthers type people that it's very leftist, it's very, progressive, it's very almost borderline communist or Maoist, one could say. But then you go look in other countries, and it just depends where the intelligence agencies want the government to go. If you
Right.
look, like for example, Palestinian accounts get taken down all the time. Like Palestinian activists are not allowed, and that's
Right.
very much, you would think, like by his supposed policies and political leanings here in the United States, he would be supporting them and not an apartheid regime. But no, it's quite the obvious, and we've seen similar things happen in South and Central Americas. Different governments being bolstered. I mean, the Ukraine, we had
I think
people attacking
Hong Kong also. Hong Kong, I think it's the same. Hong
Yep.
Kong.
Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I mean, our Silicon Valley companies are definitely not independent businesses or platforms. They are, people argue about it being a publisher. They want to call it a publisher and that kind of thing. And it's worse than that. It's worse.
Yeah, it's worse than that, but maybe also important to notice there in a private law society there would be no patents, and that's a very important thing because Facebook also I mean, Zuckerberg stole the patents, most likely, I have to say, but you can look it up. And also Bill Gates didn't write any code and so on. So, but they protect themselves with patents, and they sue every other guy who uses the same technique. That's how they keep their near monopolies. This would not be the case in the private law society because you cannot hinders anybody to use the same code or something like that because there's no government saying that. And some people say, oh, that's dangerous because you cannot secure your investment. The opposite is, and there would be less innovation. But the opposite, of course, is true. The companies would have to be much more innovative if they cannot be protected for the next 10 years or something like that. So, and there are other ways to protect your secrets and so on. So you would roll out much faster with your product and so on. You have to change your business model. Maybe that's very important for every listener also to understand. The free market is not there for the companies. For the companies, the free market is a very horrible place. There's so much competition, and Nokia, for example, doesn't produce mobile phones anymore because they forgot they lost the trend here with touch phone displays. Yeah. And so many companies go under, not if you're part of the club, of course, if you're part of the corporate elite, but many companies struggle and they go bankrupt, thousands every year. So the free market is not for companies, it's for the consumers. And that's what everybody has to understand, and especially the left. That's the power of the people. If you can choose your company, and especially in a private law society, you can choose the company who protects you. And we talked about police brutality. There is police brutality, and I'm very skeptical of the police, as you indicated. But in a private law society, you just fire them. If they don't look at how different you are treated. I'm on the Philippines here, and you have a lot of how is it called? Not supermarkets, the big shopping malls. They are protected by private companies. They are very, very friendly. They show you the way. They say, here's the toilet, here's the next shop. Compare that to a policeman who works for the state. They are much less friendly. So if you fire, and of course the shopping mall has an interest in attracting customers. So they tell their security personnel to be friendly. And that's the big difference. You can fire them at any time and that makes it better for everyone, for the masses. So the private law society is for the little guy and not for the big guy.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing people should be keeping in mind right now too, because there is a movement to defund the police here, and there may be something to that. I say that more for some of the corrupt city police departments than I do like elected sheriffs. I think there's some hope for some of the sheriff's departments that have elected officials, who actually know people in their community and know that their deputies are serving, their cousins and uncles and aunts and grandmas and all that. But I'm curious though. I think one of the big concerns right now is maybe that this push is going to be to bring in some sort of private policing force, but they won't be the kind that you're describing. I was kind of joking around the other night saying, well, hey folks, how would you like to have the LinkedIn police doing a no-knock SWAT raid on your door, or, the Zuckerberg SWAT team show up, because these are now going to be the only people can afford. Yeah, exactly. So, it could go really bad if we don't have this kind of thinking. Like if there is going to be a new paradigm of law enforcement or something, this I like this line of thought much better than I like thinking about, Larry Ellison hiring a private police force to guard San Jose or something like that,
Yeah, I think that there are two topics. The one is they really want to defund the police, and of course the crime rates would go higher. It's about killing black people. They want to kill black people. That's really the goal, and they want to blame it on the whites. That's the division here. Because if you defund the police, the crime rates explode. I saw just on Tucker Carlson. He's not a truther, but he's pretty good on some things. There was a civil rights guy, and he said after the Ferguson riots in his city, they defunded the police, and the murder rate went up 90%. And in big cities, in the two digits, 10, 20, 30, and so on. So more black people died, and of course this would happen. But if more black people die, the Black Lives Matter comes in and cries racism. So they want to. That's also important to understand. I think you know that, but the divide and conquer is the most important thing in the strategy of the power elite. They want to put up whites against blacks, but in reality they get along very good. I mean, I don't know any racist. I mean, I know so many people. So, but they put out the story. But what they do, they incite anger in the blacks on the whites. But the whites are not interested in race wars. They couldn't care less. But if you have the black communities in bad shape, the irrational thing what happens is that they elect liberals because they say they care for the black community. I mean, they are waking up. Candace Owens and so on does a fantastic job on that. But still, a majority votes for them. The riots all happen in liberal communities, so they should blame the liberal governor and so on, but they don't do that. That's a very, very sad thing, and they just want to clash the races, the religions, and so on, and they are unfortunately very successful with that. But it's always both sides who are suffering. It's the whites and the blacks. So it should be obvious, but it's not obvious to everyone, and that's so sad. Of course, as a libertarian, you judge nobody on the color you can imagine that I'm called a right-wing populist in the mainstream media, but I'm an anarchist only because I criticize the immigration policy. So I think you can imagine that. But racism is a totally stupid concept because they are good and bad on every side. But if you criticize the insane immigration policy, you're called a racist. It's totally insane.
Yeah, it's another one of those inversions you were talking about earlier. It's insane. There's a lot of active memes out there of the people saying, well, if you disagree with me, then you're this, or if you disagree with me, then you're that. You can be anything from a Nazi to Hitler himself to, this or that. And it's really, really degraded the ability to even discuss these things. And I mean, in my opinion, I'm like you. I've met people that seem to have prejudices before, but I've never met anyone that I would just say that person is a flat out just bigoted racist. Maybe one or two in my lifetime, but they are out there, but it's much easier to have a polite society when that person can speak their mind and the people around them can say, "Oh, I'm not going to consider what you're saying. You can say it, but I'm going to go hang out with these people that talk common sense who, who all want to have the same freedoms and opportunities." So yeah, it's really frustrating to see the media do this because I feel like there have been so many opportunities for the media to put a stamp down on this. You know what I mean? If the media and the social media companies, the algorithms, the television shows, my goodness, the last 5 to 10 years of television shows have just been, all based in victim psychology, all based in identity politics and radical racial philosophies that are just completely nonsensical. That most people.
Just look at the TV shows about the crime TV shows.
Yeah.
As I told you, 50% of the murders are committed by blacks. How often is a black guy the villain? How often is that? I think it's less than 10%. I mean, of course, it's not so exciting because it's most gang violence. That's not a good plot, not an interesting plot. But it's so inverted that it's totally. Most of them are white, rich guys, and so on. Of course, they also commit crimes, but not in this proportion. And that's a very subtle. I have all the HBO and Fox, and I have that all, and I really watch this and okay, where is it represented in the right proportion? And it's very subtle and unconsciously. Overall, Hollywood also still makes good movies. I just saw a good one with Jennifer Lopez, Second Act. This was not against capitalism. So my suspicion is that, of course, Hollywood is controlled by the elite and they push their agenda. But I think, but they need good writers, and they are really good writers. And they often put some libertarian. I made a video series about that. They often put libertarian ideas in it. I think the producers don't realize it sometimes. For example, in the first season of House of Cards, there was an anarchist. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh,
and he
yeah.
basically explained that all governments are evil, and he explained it rightly so. And the rest of the show goes about how bad the government is. So there are still good shows. And so I'm not totally disgusted by Hollywood. I'm disgusted by the stars and by the propaganda the stars put out, but not all movies are bad. Even there's one Captain America thing which was very good, where they describe basically a private law society, because the Avengers are a private security company, and it was about the United Nations controlling the Avengers. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
And Captain America said, "No, we are not controlled by bureaucrats and so on." So this was a very libertarian scene. So I think that so it's not so bad as many think. Let's put it this way. And there was also one series with a horrible name, APB or something. It was called. There was a private billionaire who put a private police in Chicago, and of course he was much better because he would have gotten more contracts if he was successful. But then I think they realized that that's a very bad idea, and they stopped the series after one cycle because they realized that competition, of course, even in policing, is better. So, but they are always. It's not all so bad. I don't know how did we come there. I digressed from something.
Well, I always like talking TV and pop culture. We do that on the show sometimes too. But yeah, I guess
Yeah, very interesting topic. They put out everything. So
yeah.
they tell you basically everything. Even the coronavirus, I did a video on that. The coronavirus was predicted in a TV show, and even the hydroxychloroquine was in that show. I don't know if you know that. It was, I don't know what it was called, many years ago, and it was about coronavirus and hydroxychloroquine. It's so crazy. 9/11, of course, I think everybody knows it, the passport of Neo on 9/11. So they are controlled by these Freemasons and so on. It's obvious, the signs are everywhere, but you still can learn something. Also the Matrix, you can learn a lot of things if you I don't know if you know the analysis of Matrix of Mark Passio. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've checked it out before. Yeah, he's really good on that one. Yeah. I find we have our friend Jay Dyer on this show often. He's written a couple books, Esoteric Hollywood and Esoteric Hollywood 2. So
I like him. I follow him.
Yeah, so we enjoy going down these rabbit holes. I guess I brought up Hollywood because people are just buying into so much stuff right now, and I feel like a lot of it is very Hollywood oriented. Like their worldview is very influenced by what they see in Hollywood, and it sets them up for a lot of duality and dichotomy and dead ends, basically philosophical dead ends, or I don't know. But then there's also, like you're saying, there's so much interesting stuff going on in there, and if you know what to look for, it is like I don't know, it's like a giant puzzle. It can kind of fun.
I like to solve the riddle, and still, I mean, it's, as you said, in the last 5 or 10 years, it got so bad, the propaganda, but still, even looking for the sign, and they are everywhere. So it's still exciting, and compared to German television, it's much better. The storyline is much better constructed, much more complicated. In Germany, we think the Americans are stupid. Really, that's a prejudice. And I say, did you look at the TV shows? They are much better than ours. So we are much less educated than. So they have a really they have complicated stories, but they put it out in a way that you still understand it, which is it's an art. I'm working on a script right now, so I really got into how to construct stories. It's not easy. So they are really geniuses, but of course they also use it for bad things.
Yeah, I have a suspicion that they use all their monitoring systems to pull from conversations like the one we're having right now, and then they give it to their story writers. I feel like they steal so much information from everything, and I look at YouTube that way too. I really feel upset that we as humanity built YouTube. Like they made the servers and the all the things, the ones and zeros that make it go, but everybody out there who's used YouTube or put things on YouTube are the ones that turned it into this amazing resource. It was an amazing resource up until October of 2017, and then they realized that they needed to start changing it, and now it's turning to garbage. Like I wake up and I look at what's in my recommended feed every day, and it's trash compared to what it used to be. I've lost years of research probably, and so many accounts that I treasured are gone now, and I really feel like they robbed humanity by letting us build that for them, and then taking all of the most interesting people and saying, sorry, you don't meet our terms of service anymore, you're out of here.
And the same with Google. For example, my second book, which is the biggest volume, the United States of Europe, I wrote it in 6 months, but nowadays it would take 3 years because you can't find the information anymore. I used to you find out what keywords you have to search to find certain things, and it doesn't work anymore. Yeah. You can't even find a critical study against vaccines anymore. If you type in vaccines are harmful, no, you get articles that vaccines are not harmful. It's really horrible, and it got worse and worse. But I think it was the plan all along. So it's not by accident.
Yeah.
They did the same in the television industry. I watched some video about that in the beginning, the television industry was very Christian-oriented, very freedom-oriented, to attract all the people that everybody installs a TV set at home. And as everybody had a TV set, then they started the propaganda. So I think this was the plan all along to get the monopoly or a near monopoly with YouTube, with all their work done by us. And if they have the near monopoly, then they cut it off. So I think it's because they are so experienced in that. These are things which are taught in the secret societies, how to control society. And it's always some kind of media. In former days, of course, it was the marketplace, then with the invention of then it was books and newspapers. But they are so experienced in that you see the pattern there. They know you can start business with a bad product. You can do that. But if you have a near monopoly and everybody's there, then you can start your propaganda.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and back to what you were saying about the Silicon Valley companies. You know, I'm going to pick on Facebook again for a minute here because they have Facebook. We're to believe that Facebook is, you know, this thing that was built by the Zuckerberg guy. Maybe he stole some code for it, maybe not. Cool Hollywood movie for everyone to wonder about the backstory on that. But then you look at the fact that they now have secret military laboratories at Facebook. They actually have labs that are attached to the government military internet, which is not a normal thing. You know, you might find that at a military industrial complex place like, say, Lockheed or a Boeing or something like that. But to find something like that at Facebook really should say a lot. And that laboratory deals directly with the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensics Lab, which is directly under NATO. So, and also the CIA, I believe, had a project that they were proposing and spent a whole bunch of money on. And the goal was to get everyone in the country or even worldwide to give up all their personal information. And what do you know? They shuttered that project as soon as Facebook went online. So
yeah, that's a live. I talked about the LifeLock was the name.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yep. So I mean,
research centers of Google and so on are in Israel, and Israel is known for that the military runs the software companies. They have I forgot the name, ID something. So basically, every software company in Israel is run by an ex-military guy or a spy or something, and they are the biggest companies, Google and all that, have their research laboratories there. I mean, that's totally insane.
It is. It's so insane. And I mean, conflict of interest, folks. There's so many conflicts of interest here. I mean, this fits right into the overarching concept here that Oliver's bringing us, the root of evil. Yeah. Solve a problem, recognize the root cause. And when you see conflicts of interest in these sorts of agencies that are now going to be the arbiters of our free speech here, have the ability to shut us down worldwide. I mean, it's insane. It is insane to think that this is all being done for your own good. It's just insane, man. I don't know. We're approaching the 2-hour mark here, so I'm going to shut up. I'm going to get off the mic. I'll leave it to you, and I'll let you close out the show any way you see fit.
Yeah, thank you. My battery is low also, so it's a good time. So what I still want to tell your listeners is that in my book, The Order of Freedom, I go into all the questions which may arise. So what is if there will be new monopolies and so on? What is if the judge is corrupt and so on? The obvious questions are all answered in the book. So and it's not expensive. I think the ebook is $4.99 or something. So and it's really important because all the topics we are talking about, it all comes down to the conflicts of interest. And that's another way to put my thesis of the neutral judge. It's always the conflicts of interest you have to watch. And you can hunt for the next conspiracy theory and so on. But if you don't really realize what's the real problem, then you waste a lot of time. So I would be thankful for people buying the book. You can see in the preview on Amazon, you can see the what's it called, the content and so on. So I would appreciate that.
All right, excellent. And I will link to that on today's show page. When the show page goes up, I'll send it your way, and we'll double check that it has all the links so people can figure out how to support you, where to find you on the web, see your Steam It page, and links to all of your work. So yeah, Oliver.
That's enough to buy the book. It's I don't need. I have enough support in Germany, but I want to get maybe a last word. I want to get the message out to the international community, because there is no book like this in English language. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had it translated. Of course, the English in the book is better than mine here, because it was translated by a professional. Because my viewers urged me, please put something out in English. I want to give it to my English friends, because nobody knows that stuff. And that was the purpose of the book. So I hope it runs good, not to get rich. As everybody knows who publishes books, you don't get rich of it, at least when you're not in the mainstream media and it's pushed. It's to get the message out. And I'm thankful that I could talk about it here.
Oh, I'm really glad you came in and had the discussion with us. We'll have to do it again. I'll look forward to speaking with you another time. I'm sure we could go on for hours, hours and hours. But it's been great having you on the show. And everybody, that's Oliver Janich. He was a mainstream media journalist in Germany, and he's currently an independent researcher. I'll put all the relevant links to where you can find him, his writings, and all his work on today's show page here for the Boiler Room. Oliver, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, there he goes, everybody. That is going to be it for this edition of Boiler Room. Thank you for hanging out, and hello to everybody in the chat rooms. I'm sorry I wasn't able to engage with you guys tonight, but I see you've been out there hanging out in the chat room, so that's awesome. If you want to support us, you can become a member at Patreon. That's awesome. If you do, if you don't, just share our stuff around. That's awesome too. And that's it, folks. We're out of here. We'll see you again for another edition of Boiler Room very soon here.